Zayin Ralph. Zayin Ralph, two dots. Okay. We have a long, not so long, but it's long enough. Cheslan base is long. Zayin Ralph, Chananya, the top line. Chananya bar Shalmiya, page 13, top line. Chananya bar Shalmiya, this is not relevant at all to Sanhedrin. This guy just got schlepped in by, because of what we discussed yesterday. Chananya bar Shalmiya, Mar b'shem Rav Acha, b'shem Rav, As uvda kumi Rebbe, a case came from a Rebbe where Beis Din made an error in reckoning the property of orphans to sell in order to raise money for a widow, which obviously is a ksuvah sugya, nothing to do with here, but we spoke about yesterday how we assess value, so let's get schlepped in by default. So he wanted to go above Mevid Rabban, he wanted to renege on the initial as the reckoning of Beis Din and redo it over again, which is the opinion of Rabban. Amalei Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Elazar ben Parta, ben Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Elazar ben Parta, Elazar ben Parta, the son of Rabbi Elazar ben Parta, said, Rebbe, lo kein li v'atana mishum zkenecha, that's not what you taught us to name your elders. Elimosu igeres b'koires. Rather, did they make an igeres b'koires meeting? Did they make a public tender? Amalei in. He said, they did. You know what? And you're right. The Chazal of Gamliel changed my to like Rabbi Gamliel. Actually, it says Rav Shin Gamliel, but same idea, that in came Makoch based in Yoffeh. Based in made a formal public tender, went through the procedures. Even they make a mistake of more than a sixth, the mistake stands, and they do not renege on the deal, and the sale is valid. Okay? Piska. Dinei Nefashos B'Esim V'Shlosha. Paragraph, new issue. Dinei Nefashos are 23, capital crimes of 23 judges. Ravo asked, Shor and Nisko, an ox which is stoned to death because it gored somebody to death. Meir who said, by Motzi Shemer, on the case where you have a husband who lied and set up his wife, so then we said there that we distinguish between the monetary case, which is 3 judges, and the capital case, which is 23 judges. So we say the same thing by this ox, that the ox should pay out, meaning the master of the ox should pay the ransom based on 3 judges, Visakel, and then it will make a separate case as to whether he's going to be stoned by 23. Rabbi Yisrael said, Shora Nisko Kula Mamanu. Shor Niskal, it's entirely a monetary case because actually the ox is his money. It's not a capital crime. It's the Torah's decree that it should be stoned and that its din should follow the parameters of a capital crime. So the answer is no, you cannot distinguish between the two. The halacha is that you have to follow capital procedures, even though it's not necessarily, something which we understand. It's a chok, but you have to follow capital procedures throughout the entire case.
So we said yesterday when I brought up also the Gambal Dimas.
The Gemara is going to read it up now again. I'm sorry, skip. Antagonus, a certain hegemon, a certain Roman governor. Show Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai. How come it says the ox is stoned and its master is also killed? Why do we kill his master? So Amalei says, an accomplice to a bandit is a bandit. So he, according to that, he gave Agostomus a literal pshat and pasuk, right? That would kill the master as well. When Agostoma, whatever his name was, when he left, Talmid of his students said to him, Rebbe, he pushed him off with a reed. How do you teach the pasuk to us? How do you explain to us the true pshat in the pasuk? So he said, it says the ox is stoned also its master is killed. Like the death of the master, so too is the death of the ox. Meaning, there's a parallel drawn between the death of the master and the death of the ox. Just like the death of the master is with cross-examination in 23, if he had killed, right? So to the death of the ox, when you kill the ox, is B'Jishal Chakira, is with cross-examination, and Srim Shloshim with 23. Okay? So you stage a trial for the ox. Halacha Gimel.
Except the ox comes first in the pasuk rather than
right. It's true. Obviously, you have to figure out diktuk-wise, but we're not going to do that today. Allah Gimel, or ever. Allah Gimel. Masnisin, Ain Donim as Hashevet, Lo Sanovi, Hashek, you don't judge an entire tribe. Actually, more is going to say what that means. The laws of Navi Shechem, nor a false prophet, laws of Kohen Gadol, nor a high priest, elevation Shoshim Echad, except in the high court of 71. One cannot take out to an optional war. LP basis Shoshim Echad, unless it's sanctioned by Basim 71. One cannot enter the city of Jerusalem by Lazarus to the courtyard to the base of Mikdash. LP basis Shoshim Echad, unless you have a Basim 71. One doesn't appoint the minor Sanhedros for the other tribes, elevation Shoshim Echad, the Basim 71 has jurisdiction over all other Sanhedros in Klal Yisrael. One doesn't make a city, a subject which worship Avodah into a ruin, elevation Shoshim Echad, unless the Basim 71 passes judgment. You don't make an Ir Nidachas on a border, because that leaves entry for the Arabs. Below, don't make 3. Avo Osim Achushtaim make 1 or 2, and then one is going to stress that further. Says it says more, I understand. What does it mean to judge the entire tribe? It said at the beginning of the Mishnah, you don't judge the entire tribe, 71. Come see, you don't judge 2 people simultaneously. Each person needs his own court case, right? You don't judge an entire tribe at once? What does it mean to call a Shevet? How do you judge the entire Shevet? So it says, Tanya said, "B'nasi shvatim masni." So he gave one shot. He said it's talking about the nasi of the shevet. It's talking about the head of the tribe. The truth is, I forget how the Babli learns this. Now, the Babli must have its own shot in this.
Isn't there an analogy to Sodom and Gomorrah?
What, the whole shevet?
Yeah.
Or
Because they judged, Hashem judged the whole city, and Avram tried to save.
Yeah, but that's what Shem. What does that do with Basin here? Even here in Nidachos, when they judge in Nidachos, they judge it 1 by 1. So they probably put them all together at the end. Yes? We just finished the Mishnah.
Okay. 4 lines below the Gemara.
4 lines below the Gemara?
Where the Gemara starts.
Right, okay.
On the 0.
What?
3 lines. I'll remember what I'm saying.
Number 0.
You're page 15.
Third one, yeah. Yeah, no, I was following you fine, but you're going so fast that it just totally lost me.
Okay, I don't see any Sanhedrin as a problem. So I read Bonner's.
Right here, right?
The second line they were. I don't know the time.
Oh, right, okay. See?
Okay. So, let me just see if the, what he does here. Doesn't actually, doesn't say, yeah, here it says, it's talking about a shevet which was Ovid Avodah Zarah. In other words, it's like an entire shevet which judged Avodah Zarah. So it's like an Eridachas, only on a grander scale. That's what the Babli says. Yerushalmi does not learn that way. Yerushalmi is 2 pshatim. One is the nasi of the shevet, right? The present now, and the other pshat I think is more interesting. Amar Abelezer says because this was reminiscent of United States law. You know, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction in only one type of case. What type of case is the Supreme Court of original jurisdiction? Lawyer.
Which was called treason? Treason, that's what it is.
No. They don't have original jurisdiction in treason. Any court can judge treason. Come on.
Constitution.
Nope. That's not original jurisdiction. In disputes between the states.
Oh, of course.
When New York and New Jersey had a dispute as to who owns Liberty Island, whatever it's called, so they had to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court appointed a master to judge the case. That was relatively recently. Because, see, you guys don't even know American law. Where's your Torah and Derech Eretz here? So in any event, so that's the thing. So in a case like that, the Supreme Court is original jurisdiction. Here's the same thing. Omar Rabbi Lezer, there's a forest between two Shvatim, and they're arguing who has the rights over it. New York and New Jersey, right? Shimon and Yehuda, they're arguing over it. That case made the Sanhedrin as original jurisdiction. Okay? Fascinating Yerushalmi. Says, Omar Rabbi Lezer said, Nemar Kan Zodoin. Now we want to know how you know that a Novi Sheker is judged in a basin of 71. So Rabbi Lezer says, Nemar Kan Zodon, it says here, Zodom, Nemar Lahalon, Zodom. It says Zodon by a Novi Sheker, and it says Zodon by a rebellious elder, the Zokin Marmid. Of course, he rebels against Sanhedrin, right? It says Zodon here, it says the Zodon over there. Zodon Dibra Novi. Here it says, the false prophet spoke maliciously. Mazon Shnemer, just like the Zodon over there, Novi Sheker Kosim Medaber, so it's about a false prophet. Avzodon Shnemer Kam, Novi Sheker Medaber, the one with Zokim Mamre. It's not really talking about a false prophet, but it's a parallel to false prophet, and therefore, just like the rebellious elders get 71, the Novi Sheker is judged at 71, right? Amar Chizchitz is a slightly different drasha. Nemar Kan should be Dovar. It says Dovar by both. It's a shove again. So Dovar by the rebellious elders. V'nemar Lahal, it says by the Novi, instead of the pasuk which brings the Arshei Daber Novi B'Shem Hashem. It's a better pasuk. Shaitar Yitzhak brings it down. Acha Novi Sher Yozid L'Daber. So there it says Dovar, and there it says Daber. Ma Dibar Shenem Alam B'Novi Sheker Kosim Daber, just like here where it says Dovar, it's about Novi Sheker, false prophet. Adibar Shenem Akan, so to the Novi, which is so to where it says it by Zokim Mamre, the rebellious elder, of course, it's not toy about a Novi Sheker, but it's a parallel to Novi Sheker Kosim Daber. They both require judgment in the court of 71. Piska, 4 lines to the bottom. One does not go out to optional war unless a court of 71 has ruled accordingly, etc. Rabbi Omer says here, but should be kittachila, like the first time around. In other words, like precedent in history. David, when David went up to wage war, he went b'dvar God this is to wage war against this actually, I'm sorry, I'm making a mistake. This is not talking about Chemeshus, even though it says this is going on, adding on to Yerushalmi. How do you know that in order to add on to Yerushalmi, we need 71 elders? So remember, Kitchila, it says, like the first time they did it. It says that the first time they did it, it says, Vayal David Vargod, David went up with the ascent of God to conquer the Jebusite city of Sholem, of Salem. That's the king Melech, the king David, the Novi, and the prophet God. Shlomo Livnosis Beis Hashem Elokei Yitzhak Bar Moriah. Later on it says Shlomo began to build the house of God, the Lord of Israel, on Har Moriah. Asher Nira, because he saw what he see. Elu Urim Tumim. That's the Urim Tumim, the illuminated breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. The David Avihu. That which is it says for David, his father, that's an allusion, although it's not clear to me exactly how, to the Sanhedrin. But I know exactly how, actually. Mullah explains the next line. How do you know Avihu is an allusion to the Sanhedrin? Because Shal Avicha, it says about the Sanhedrin, ask your father, v'yagetcha, and they'll tell you what to do. Zekenecha, your elders, v'yomelach, and they'll say to you what you should do. So we see that Avihu refers to this pasuk where the Sanhedrin is mentioned. Hashir, now we go on to other things which we have to do in order to consecrate new parts of Yerushalayim, new parts of the Beis HaMikdash. We have a song, we sing. Vayelech, they make a horror. Vayelech achreim, it says, Hoshio, v'chatzi sarei Yehuda. They went behind when they made a procession to renew Yerushalayim. It says they went behind Hoshea, at the time of the second return, the return to Zion, they went around Hoshea and half of the nobles of Judah, and it says there they were singing songs, whatever the pasuk says exactly. It says they went b'toidos u'shir. How do we know toidos? They have to take korbanos. They have to take korbanos. It says v'amidash te todos gedolos. I took 2 large todos, which are lamb, sheep, v'taluchos, and they were proceeding the yamin on the right, me'al l'choima, on atop the wall of Sharash goes to the dung gate. Amar Shmuel Yudah Rishur said Maxi Malchos v'lo Taluchos. Why did it say why it should it doesn't say Malchos, rather it says Taluchos. Why? We didn't just let them go, we led them. In fact, Shartar says, well, I think he's wrong about this, that they took already them after they were slaughtered and they carried them, but that's not the pshat. I think they actually walked in front of them. Ravuna Barachia b'shem Rav Maisla Dvar Torah. Ravuna named Rav learned certain elements of this expansion of Yerushalayim based on the Torah itself. It says by the Mishkan, everything I show you as Tablis HaMishkan, the plan of the Mishkan, that's called Caleb and all of its implements. V'chein tasu, and so you shall do, which means kein tasu doris is how you do for subsequent generations. Moshe is a melech. Moshe was the king, V'navi, and a prophet to boot. Aaron, Aaron was participating in building the Mishkan, that's Urim and Tumim. As for the Shimon, so then we take 70 elders, that's Sanhedrin. Now that's really not written in the parish of the Mishkan, so we're fudging it a little bit. But in Torah it says gather 70 elders. Shalavicha b'yagercha, and of a goymer. This of course these are the elders, this is Canaan, right? Hashir, but now when we have to learn about the song, we have to resort to the pasuk in Nehemiah regardless. It says, they went behind the korbanos. Todos, I took 2 todos, but they're walking to the right, atop the wall, by the Shar Ashba. Maksiv Malchos, same thing we had before. Maksiv Malchos, it doesn't say Malchos. Lo, Taluchos, it says Taluchos. What does that mean? Atos Haidach, somebody else led them. Ketsu Malchos. Now, how would these 2 todos walk? Rabbi Chia, Rabba, Rabbi Shimba, Rabbi Dan Machlokas. Chadamar Zu Keneged Zu, next to each other. Okay, the 2 todos will walk together next to each other. The Charon Amar, the other said, now this is not in the Bavli in Sanhedrin, it might be in the Bavli in Shavuos, it says here on the side, but I don't remember, as Shavuos, as you guys know by now, is not my forte, but it's not in the Bavli in Sanhedrin, it's not in the Bavli in Sanhedrin. So in any event, so it says here, one after the other. So one said they walked next to each other, the other said one after each other, okay? They both darshan the same pasuk. The second Torah went, this is pasuk in Nehemiah, the second Torah went mul, and I went behind it. Now, what question is, what does mul mean? The Hebrew word mul. Mandamar zu keneged zu. He says that they both walk next to each other in tandem. Learns Vuyo Shem Uli writes in that pasuk which says he's sitting opposite me, which means that they're corresponding to each other in tandem. He says one after the other. It says you do malika from the back of the neck, which means one is in the back of each other. So actually mul could mean opposite and in tandem. It can mean in succession, one behind the other. The question is what it means over here by these 2 todos. Again, I don't remember such malchus in the Bavli at all. Okay? Says more further, Mandamar zu keneged zu, if they walk next to each other, every place would actually only have 1 toida corresponding to it, which is a cool svara. In other words, if you have 2 animals walking, let's say this is the new wall of Yerushalayim, right? Right next to me is the new wall of Yerushalayim. We're extending the walls of Yerushalayim. So the 2 animals are walking like this, right? So there's actually only 1 animal between here and the wall, right? And 1 animal between here and inside, right? Because the 2 animals are walking in tandem. It's only the space between the 2 animals which has 2 animals walking corresponding to it, right? But if because they're walking like this, so this animal takes care of this side, and this animal takes care of that side, right? Don't ask me why this is an important issue. The Gemara obviously feels it is. However, they walked in succession, so both animals took care of both, right? Because there was no hefsek, right? Because one of the sound in front covered both sides, the sound behind it covered both sides, right? That's, for some reason, more feels necessary to make that point. Okay, it's only one toilet. They went in succession. Means a kol makom u'makom which are replaced with skar b'shtei turas has two animals. The one who says they went one after the other, I understand very well that which it says the Tninon, it says Hapnimis nechelos, the inner one is eaten, V'achisoni surface, there are two totals. The inner one is eaten and the outer one is burnt. So the outer one is the one which goes first. The inner one is the one which goes second. Why it's the inner? Because it's closest to the people who are walking behind, right? Of course, it makes sense just in drush, because the outer one, that's going to an area which is not yet consecrated, so it's got to be burnt. The second one, since it's following the first one, so therefore it's already walking in an area which is at least partially holy, so that one can be eaten, right? That's just drush. But in any event, the Gemara's question is, Ella, but according to Mandamar Zukine, but according to Mandamar Zukineged Zu, Pimis, which is the inner one? If they're both walking like this, which is the inner one? Gemara says, fascinating answer. Zushas Muchla Bais. If this is where you extend Yerushalayim, and this is the base on Mikdash, so whichever one is closest to the base on Mikdash, that's the inner one. And that's holier, and that's the one which is eaten. Okay? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yad Shemiel said, Api Novi Neachelos. He said, that which one is eaten, one is not, it's purely based on the vua, because there's no rhyme nor reason. I mean, we just made a drush up out of it, right? But he says there's really no understanding of why one is eaten and one is not, but that's what the Navi says. Okay. Rabbi Zera says, Tane Tamo, we learned over there, Navi Yeshkan. In Bavel, they learned the Brisa. If there's a Navi in this expansion line, Urim v'tumim lo manitzach. Why I need the Urim v'tumim? The Navi will tell you what the Ratzon Hashem is, and the Urim v'tumim will tell you the Ratzon Hashem. Why I need both? It's like belt and suspenders. Revo said, the truth is the Gemara doesn't answer that. Seems so. It's not clear. In Bavel, they might have held Yitaka don't need both, and it's a major nafkamina, a major nafkamina, because in Bayeshe they didn't have Urim v'tumim. At the beginning of Bayeshe, they had Navi, right? So if you hold, you can add in Yerushalayim based on a Navi alone, even though they didn't have Urim v'tumim, they could add. But if you hold, you can only add if you have an Urim v'tumim, right, the illuminated breastplate. They didn't have that in the second base of Mikdash at all. So the second base of Mikdash would be inhibited to expand Yerushalayim. They'd be limited to whatever was actual Yerushalayim in the first base of Mikdash period. Okay? This would be a major nafkamina. Okay?
Especially nowadays.
What? Nowadays, especially. Says more further, Rabbi Yazir B'Shem, we just said, Ashkach Tani, we learned to B'Brais, Rabbi Yidam Et Tzarech Urim V'tumim. Okay, Rabbi says, need Urim V'tumim, so there's a cause of why, we don't know. Amrei Avav said, it's Palgun Beit of Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish had a machlokas. Charamar, now this machlokas pertains to the second base HaMikdash period, it would seem. Charamar once said, Charamar Boinin B'Chakach Magdishin. First they built the walls, and then they consecrated them. Charamar, the other said Magdishin B'Chakach Boinin. First they consecrated, and then they built. Manamar Boinin B'Chakach Magdishin, who said first they built and then they consecrated. You don't see the walls as if they go up. In other words, first you have to consecrate. Truth is even be true at the time of first baseman. I don't know what it meant. You have to first build the walls, and then you consecrate the area within the walls that you made, right? Bikshu lo sif ala heichal. Now the truth is this: the Gillian Ephraim and Rabaz both make the same point. The something probably missing here in the Gemara, which is what about the other Mandiyama? The other Mandiyama says that you first consecrate and then you build the walls. So they hold, and they bring down from a brisa. The brisa says that, or Bavli, I'm not sure exactly. It looks like it's a Bavli. That they hold that the time of the second base on Mikdash. The first base on Mikdash should be problematic. First you have to build the walls, then you have to consecrate. But the time of the second base on Mikdash, you could consecrate first and then build the walls afterwards, because Kedusha Rishona, Kedusha L'Shaitim, Kedusha L'Asi Lavo. The first Kedusha, Shlem HaMelech, were made for the first Beis HaMikdash, lasted forever. The Kedushas Haaretz was canceled. The land of Israel's Kedusha was canceled when they went into Golus Bavel, but not the Kedusha of Yerushalayim. So therefore, the way they bring down from the Bavli is that this Machlekes doesn't pertain to the first time around, right? The second time around. The first time around, they would hold, everybody would hold, you have to first build the walls, then consecrate. The question is when they came back to Yerushalayim and rededicated, because did they have to again first build the walls, or could they go around before they built the walls because the consecration still remained for the first Beis HaMikdash?
What's your definition of consecration?
Teed Meiser Sheni? That's a good question. Teed Meiser Sheni and Teed Korbanos. That's the Kedusha of Yerushalayim.
Because the Evan Shasiyah was there, and that, by the definition...
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. That's a spiritual holiness. We're talking about tangible halachic holiness, where you can eat Korbanos, Kachim in the Harabayis, in the Azara, where you can eat Kachim Kalim, right? And where you can eat Meiser Sheni. And similarly, where the different types of Tomei people can go and cannot go. No. These are the halachic parameters.
There's that the Shekhinah came down and gave the consecration.
That's also just a spiritual concept. You tell you a spiritual type of guy, but we're talking about halacha here. Put on your brisker thinking caps. Okay. So, spiritual. Come on. Okay. Says the Gemara. Now, if they want to add on to Yerushalayim, they used to use the two animals, two sheep. But they wanted to add on to the Heichal, which is holier Madrega, because Todas can be in all of the city of Yerushalayim, right? So the consecrated Yerushalayim, they walk around with these two sheep. But they wanted to add on to the Heichal, to the Beis HaMikdash proper. How would they do that? What are they going to add on? They need something which corresponds to that Kedusha and can't be taken beyond that. So what they would use is a mincha. Which mincha would they use? So it says, so initially we want to have something with chametz, just like the Torahs have chametz in them, right? The loaves which come with the Todah have chametz, 10 of the 40 loaves of chametz. So we want to use the two breads which are brought on Shavuos, which are chametz. It says more makdisha b'yotif. How can you use them? You have to use them on yotif. And yotif, you can't do such a thing and make it hektish. It's not yotif dik, right? So I don't know if it's a drabanan daraisa, but they wouldn't do it on yotif. Ela b'lechem apanim. So it says the Gemara, we use lechem apanim. So it says the Gemara, lechem apanim, of course, not chametz. We lose that advantage. So what does lechem apanim do? Makdishim b'Shabbos? Lechem apanim, we'd have to do it on Shabbos. That's when you remove the lechem apanim. Now the truth is, the Gemara did know there's a difference between lechem apanim and shnei lechem, but that's why I initially thought lechem apanim is better. But we're really shooting it down. We thought lechem apanim is better because there's no issue of lina by lechem apanim, right? You can leave because they bake the lechem apanim on Friday, right? And they leave it for Shabbos anyway. They leave it till next Shabbos. So the shtei lechem you can't leave till day after Yontif in order to use, right? Because that's already lina. You're not allowed to leave it overnight. But the lechem apanim which is brought every Shabbos is by definition left every night, overnight. At least more than one night. And it says left for 7 nights. But nevertheless, says more, the only time you can actually use it for this purpose is on Shabbos, because that's when you take it on and off the table. So therefore, one Shabbos put it on, next Shabbos take it off. And that, you can't be makdish on that. So the Gemara shoots that down. Okay? Says more, Ela B'layla. Says more, well, use it the night before. Because you bake it on Friday, or I guess I'm not sure what good it does actually, Lila. Oh no, after you take it off, right. Shabbos, after you take it off, at night, Motzei Shabbos before Lina, because Lina is at daybreak, right? So Motzei Shabbos, take it and use it in order to consecrate the city. Doesn't mean you can't do that either, right? Why can't you? The truth is you could even do that with Shtei Lechem also, because Shavuos night, I'm not sure if that's true. I think maybe you could leave them over Shavuos night as well. Motzei Shavuos, I'm not sure. But name it says Rabbi Yezmi, you can't do it at night anyway because it's a function of the court, right? So court has to be done during the day, right? Rabbi Yezmi says, you know what? You're right. We make our own mincha for this. A mincha's mafeh, especially baked mincha, especially for this purpose. That's what we use to make this. Says I had said when they came up from the Goyla, from Chutz La'aretz. So then, Shikriva Chakach Kichu. So we said, according to Mandomra, who Kichu Shaitam Kichu Asid Lavo, that Kedush is right there. So what they could do is they could sacrifice a korban, and they could sacrifice the todos, right? And that way, they can make the todos, sacrifice them, and that creates the kedusha. But b'achnosim la'aretz b'meh kichu, when they entered Eretz Yisrael, how are they mekadesh? That's an interesting question. I'm not sure I fully really understand it. But in other words, when they first entered Eretz Yisrael and wanted to consecrate Yerushalmi and the Beis HaMikdash, so what they mekadesh? They needed 2 todos. But there wasn't yet a Beis HaMikdash. How can you establish a todah? So I'm not sure what's bothering them more, because you'll volunteer it and you'll sacrifice it later on. Because after all, they used to walk around the todos around Yerushalayim. They didn't, according to Shai Teretz Rose, says they slaughtered it first, so the question makes sense. How can you slaughter if there is no Beis HaMikdash and then walk around with the body parts, right? There was no slaughter to take place, there was a Beis HaMikdash. But I think that actually we assume that they walked around with the live animals. But I guess nevertheless, the Gemara's question is, how can you mekadesh todos if there is no yet Mishkan Beis HaMikdash? The answer is Shaki mekadesh. So again, I'm not sure I understand the Gemara's question, but the Gemara gives a simple answer. The Gemara says there was a Mishkan, right? Habos minovid b'shtei todos habos minov v'givon. The 2 todos which were brought in the Mishkan. Mishkan was Nov and after Shiloh was destroyed, the Korban, the Mizbeach went to Nov and Givon. That's where they brought the todos from. Okay, period. Abba Shaul says, Shtei Beitzim Hayu. Now, anybody who's been the Holy Land model of Yerushalayim knows there were successive walls around Yerushalayim, right? 3 walls. So he says, Abba Shaul says there were 2 upper parts of Yerushalayim. Now the Pnei Moshe says in Har Zaysim, but I don't think he's right about that, because Har Zaysim I don't think was ever part of Yerushalayim proper. I think it means towards Mei Shorim. They found the 3rd wall of Yerushalayim. There's a street in Mei Shorim called the Chova Chomash Lishit, because that's where they found remnants of the 3rd wall of Yerushalayim. Okay, so I think that it's out in that direction. So it says Shnei Beitzim Yerushalayim. There were 2 reservoirs, and they were surrounded by walls, and they extended Yerushalayim out in that direction. HaTachtoina, there was the lower one, Velyona, and the upper one. Now here the Girsa is very messed up. It should be here. It should say, take out Ein Kedusha Gemura, and continue HaTachtoina, and it should say HaTachtoina Hoisa Kedusha Gemura. The lower reservoir, its Kedusha was complete. And should say Sheniskacha B'Kulam. It was made consecrated in time of the first Beis HaMikdash, and they still had Urim V'Tumim at that time, so it was completely consecrated. Yoina, the upper one, it should say here Ein Kedusha Gemura, didn't have a complete Kedusha. Shabaliyasam in a Gola, because when they came to the Gola from the Gola, that's where they enclosed that area. And Lo B'Melech V'Lo B'Urim V'Tumim, they didn't have a king in Urim V'Tumim, so that did not have the full holiness. Lefichach, therefore, HaTachtoina, the lower one, which is taka full kedusha. Now there are a lot of Yusos here. I'm going to read like the Ridbaz. So if you take a look at Ridbaz, it's the paragraph here to the left of the Gemara in the second line. Lefichach HaTachtoina, the lower one, Amaratzim ochlim sham kachim kalim, and the Amaratzim eat their korbanos, which is their right. Avalo Meiser Sheni, but not Meiser Sheni. They didn't want to let Amaratzim eat Meiser Sheni there. They wanted people to have a heker to know this is a buffer zone. In other words, yes, this is still Yerushalayim, but it's almost not Yerushalayim. Be careful. Chaverim, we're not afraid Chaverim are going to make mistakes. Ochlim sham kachim kalim u'Meiser Sheni. They can eat both there. El Yoina, the upper one, Amaretz nichnasim sham. The Amaratzim would go there. And they would eat kachik kalim even though they weren't supposed to. They weren't supposed to, but they would eat it there anyway. Avalo Meiser Sheni, but they know not to eat Meiser Sheni. Which is interesting because it sounds like Meiser Sheni was somehow more chomer by them than Kachim Kalim. I would have expected the opposite, that Kachim Kalim, which are Kabbalah, or Shlomim, are more severe by them than Meiser Sheni. But somehow Meiser Sheni was more severe. They knew not to eat Meiser Sheni in that area.
It's like they knew to take off Meisers, Amarats, and you could trust that.
Well, most Amarati took a Meiser Sheni. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, the mice of the Girsos are all messed up. It's not clear. There's a different Girs of the Gemara which might be better. The Girs of the Gemara says that no, actually, one in the Gemara is no better. I don't know, but anyway. But the Chaverim, of course, Chaverim enochlim lo kachim kaim lo meiser sheni. Of course, Chaverim knew not to eat there, right? They didn't eat anything there because they knew that it was outside Yerushalayim. Okay, so now after that Girs change is said and done. We're in the second wide line at the dot. Now what it means is, literally it means why didn't they sacrifice? But it means is, if it wasn't holy and they couldn't make it holy, why didn't they close it with a wall? Why did they close it with a wall? They knew they couldn't make it holy. They didn't have the capacity to make it holy. So why did they close it by a wall? By the way, the whole sugi is not in, it's all not in the Bavli. None of this is in the Bavli. So why did they close the geography of Yerushalayim is not a subject in the Bavli. So why did they consecrated? So it says that why they didn't close the wall. So it says more. What do you mean, why? That's the easiest way to get into Yerushalayim. The northwest approach to the old city, that's the way you come in nowadays also, right? The road actually comes down from that direction. Because there it's actually the smoothest approach to Yerushalayim. So that's why they needed extra walls over there. They knew they couldn't make it holy, but they put up the walls for defensive purposes. That's why the walls were there. Okay? So it was the weak point of Yerushalayim, it was easy to conquer for them. Okay. New issue. Third line down on wide lines. Instead of Einosim, it should be 9 Shosim. How do we know they make Sanhedrin for Shvatim? How do we know that each Shavit gets on to Sanhedrin? Sanhedrin, Talmud says, to each of your tribes they should judge the nation. And so we don't make Yeridachas on the border, and also not internally in Eretz Yisrael 3. Rabbi Yochanan B'Shem Rabbi Yosha said, plus Amoraim, the 3 Amoraim, who argue about this. Now the truth is, this argument is different in the Bavli. Yerushalmi Bavli seems like the whole sugi is going on the border, or at least, but here it's all going internally in Eretz Yisrael. Chanamar Osim Shtaim once said you make 2 Yerni Dachas. I'm sorry, Achas Osim, you make 1 Yerni Dachas, and each district, Yehuda and Galu, Shtaim Osim, you don't make 2. You make 1 in the north, 1 in the south, and that's it. Charon Amar, the others, yet another Tana said, now here we're going to change the words, because most of the Farshim change it. Hamifuzaros Osim, if they're scattered, you can make even more than 2. Even 2 in the north, 2 in the south, as long as there's a decent interval, because then it doesn't create, a weak point in Eretz Yisrael. I should say hasmuchos, again I transpose smuchos and vazaros. If they're close together, Einosim, they don't make two together. That's once for her. The other man, though, says the exact opposite. Chronomai says, Mifuzaros Einosim kolikar. You can't scatter open areas in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because then that allows the Goyim to come with a tactic. Shemiyafutsu ovdei kochavim v'yavol Eretz Yisrael. Because maybe the Goyim will scatter and go to all the weak points and lay ambush in various different weak points, flash points all over Eretz Yisrael. So if anything, you can make 2 in the same place. Because then that's the weak point, that's where we have to protect it. But not to scatter them. So one Mandamar holds it's better to scatter the Yerni Dachases, and then you can make more. The other says, no, it's better to bunch them together, and then you can make more. It's a strategic question. Which way is the easiest to defend? Some say, Shema say, my dear, Shema Futsu Oivim, maybe the enemies will disperse you, only they korcha, and they'll come to large open spaces within Eretz Yisrael.
I think in the original Yeshivaris, didn't they scatter different kibbutzim purposely along
They scatter, right, sure.
That's right. For that very reason.
That's right. It's a strategic issue. Okay, Sanhedrin G'dayla Yisrael Shoshim Na'achal. This great Sanhedrin.
During a new Gemara?
The Yerushalmi. Okay, Sanhedrin G'dayla. The great Sanhedrin was, Shoshim Na'achal was of 71. Uktana, the minor Sanhedrin, shows 3 Mesosha 23. Minai Gosh Yishashiv, I know the great one with 71. Shneman says, Esli Shimish Mizik Neso, gather me 70 elders from Israel. Moshe Rabbe and Moshe are atop them. Hareshim Echad 71. The Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shiri, Rabbi Yehuda said Moshe doesn't count, the number is 70, and L'Doros it's also 70. Minai Chtana Shishal Asir Shosha, I know small ones are 23. Shemai says, V'shoftu Eidah, it says, the congregation shall judge, V'til Eidah, the congregation shall say. Eidah Shofetes is one which is judges, is prosecuting, V'ematzelos and one saving, which is defending. Harei Esrim, that's 20. We have 9 later, I know an Eidah is 10. Sherman says by the Meraglim, Amasa later Azos, how long will this bad congregation last? And there, of course, there were 10 bad Meraglim, right? Yotzu Yeshua V'Kolev, excluding Yeshua and Kolev. When I love you, Otzlosh, how we know there are another 3 besides the 20. Make sure it's all together. It says, don't follow a simple majority in a negative ruling. Shomer what does it mean? Does it mean it means be with them for a positive ruling? So if that's the case, why did it say follow the majority to incline? So, how do you follow? So it says you should always incline to good, not to bad. So what does it mean follow the majority? So I'm going to tell you what it means. You don't incline to good the same and to bad the same way. When you incline to good, simple majority rules. If you incline to bad, you need a majority of 2. So they really should need 22 judges in the Sanhedrin, right? 10 prosecuting, 10 defending, and in order to prosecute like prosecution, you need a gap of 2 that make it 22. So why is it 23? Because they ain't based in Shokol. We never want to balance court. So I'm receiving another one. I receive is 23. For how many inhabitants do you need to see in order to be suitable for Sanhedrin? May have 120 males. 230 males. So it's one member Sanhedrin per 10 to you group of 10, like it was in the Midbar. Saros was the minimum level of Dayanim. Rabbi Azim Sherriel said, Nemar Kan Eidah says here Eidah, the Nemar La'alna Moshe Leidar Rozos. Now he's not referring to that, he's referring to how do we know that a minion of Jews is 10 people. So this is being Dashki B'soch B'nei Yisrael. Of course, that's talking about Kiddush Hashem, but also it's talking about Dvorim Sheba Kedusha, right? Holy prayers in the shul, Kedusha and things, Kaddish. So it says, V'nik Dashki in Eidah, and it says Eidah by the Meraglim. Maled Amrullah, just by that, Eidah says Meraglim is 10, Asar, Hafka Asar, so too for any Davar Sheba Kedusha, for a mini you need 10 people. Our Mr. says a different Josh, the same idea. Ne'emar kan toch, it says Mikdashi b'toch b'nei Yisrael by Dvorim Sheba Kedusha. And now it says toch also by the when the tribes came down to meet Yosef. It says by a vo b'soch haboim. And how many tribes went down to meet Yosef? How many of the brothers? 10. Cut your leaf. If you go learn for the word toch, Sagininu, there are many times it says toch. In Tanakh, it's many times it says toch. In the Chumash, many times it says toch. And various different numbers. So that's not a good limud. I'll tell you how to learn. Nemar Kames, and I don't know why this is any better. But Nemar Kames, so it says B'nai Yisrael, V'nikdashi b'toch B'nai Yisrael, by Dvarim Sheba Kedusha. For Nemar Laham B'nai Yisrael, it says, when they went out to Egypt, V'yavo B'nai Yisrael L'sheh Lishbor. Now, so therefore, we learn B'nai Yisrael, Ba B'nai Yisrael, Shneimar Laham Asar, Afkan Asar, and Arabosai. How many times say B'nai Yisrael in Torah? Just as many, if not more than Toch. And how many connotations does it have in terms of numbers? Many connotations.
600,000.
600,000. But I guess they knew it's either 10 or 600,000. It can't be 600,000, therefore it's got to be 10. That's what I guess they're assuming. Okay. Piska, new paragraph. Minai Lavi Otshosh, I know that there are another 3 courts. Tani, Rav Shimon Gamliel, this is, I know another 3 judges, making up 23. Okay, that's not relevant to what we're about to discuss. Tani, we learned, says, initially they were only signed on the ksuva of women who are marrying legitimately. Now, Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim, Mesim, Lakona. Only very high people, Kohanim, Levim, and Jews who had enough yichus to marry into family of Kohanim. I'm not sure why that's brought down here, but now comes a very important brisa, one of the most fundamental brises in all of Shas. Rabbi Yosef said, "Brishana lois hamachlokas b'Yisrael." Way back when there was no arguments in Am Yisrael. El Sanhedrin Shishim Yachrei Seyosheves Blitzchus Agozis. There was Sanhedrin of 71 elders in the chamber of the hewn stone of the Beis Hamikdash. Ushnei Batidim are two lower courts. It should be not Shlosha, but rather Shel Esrim Shlosha. Two lower courts of 23 each. Hayoshin were on the Har Bayis proper. Echad Bechel, one within the confines of the fence around the Azara. And one further out on the Temple Mount. Uvatitim, besides that. But they didn't show Shloshim Esrim Yeshim B'chal Yeretz Eretz Yisrael. There were 20. There were courts of 23 in all the cities of Eretz Yisrael. Now here we're going to see the rudiments of an appeal system. It's not really an appeal system. It isn't really an appeal system in Judaism. What it means is rather that if one court is not so knowledgeable, then you go to the next court up. And the truth in modern Israeli law, where there is an appeal system, even in halacha, they try to use this as a source, even though it doesn't really work 100%. But the theory is the lower court doesn't know as much as a higher court. That would be the rationale to have an appeal system in halacha, as we shall see in a moment. Okay. If some inhabitant of land of Israel has to ask a halachic question, he'll come and ask in the base of the city. If they knew the halacha, if they heard it, they told him. If not, who the questioner, and the senior judge, Brian Bashud, also based on Sobachiro, they go to the next city, most adjacent to that city. If they knew it, they would tell them. Now, based on the adjacent to the city would probably be the regional court or higher court, a court of the Shevet. If they didn't know the answer, he and the superior judge of that higher court, they'll go to the outer court on the Temple Mount. If they knew, they would say, he and the superior judge of that court, they go to the next court up. They knew, they would say, they would go, everybody, I guess, all the mufloim, all the superior judges would come together from all the courts along the way. And they went to the high court in the Lishkas chambers of the hewn stone. From which Torah goes out, and expands to Chol Yisrael. Shneimar says, to all Jews, Shneimar says, from that place which Hashem chose, V'gomer, etc. Sanhedrin Shablishkas goes that Sanhedrin in the chamber of the stone, even though it was 71, but a quorum, would never be less than 23. They always have to maintain a quorum. If they have a tzarech man, let's say it's one of them had to go to the bathroom, he has to count. If there are 23 left as a quorum, he could go out. If he was not loyal, he had to wait. He needed a hall passes. They worked long hours. From the Talmud in the morning, to sunrise, to the Talmud in the afternoon, sunset. Shabbos Yom Tovim, Shabbos and Yom Tov, they didn't work outright. It's the sound of the base medrash on the Temple Mount. Nisha Alocha. If a question was asked before the great Sanhedrin, if they knew the halacha, then they said the answer. If they never did not know the halacha, they voted. Rabbi Mazakin, if most people said Zakai, meritorious Ziku. They found meritorious. Rabbi Chaim, most people said libel, chivu, they said libel. Rabbi Tam, most people said Torah, Tiru, they said it was Torah. Rabbi Tam, most people said Tomei. The team when they said Tomei. From there, Torah went out and expanded all of Israel. What happened later on to botch up the system? When there were many students of Shammai who did not learn properly, they started bickering with each other, and they would not just forsake, but on the basis of votes, right? So Rabu Machlekes V'nasu Shtei Torahs. B'Yisrael, now Shtei Torahs became many Machlekes, and it became like two different Torahs.
This seems to imply maybe I'm misunderstanding.
They were doing Lishma, but they were incompetent. So it says they weren't properly versed in how to learn. Because then they would have known how to come to a common conclusion. Okay, or it could mean sure they perhaps even know a little bit. They didn't have the proper way of working in harmony together. It's a little bit cryptic, but the bottom line is that they were not mature enough to have the halacha work out harmoniously. And the Maisa, whatever they pass in the entry, will be sent to all the cities in Eretz Yisrael. And they used to recruit anybody they found chacham, smart, onav, humble, shafli, shafli, sane, actually. Sane, S-A-N-E. Ayin toiva, good eye, nevesh shvela, a low spirit, ruach nemuma ucha, same idea, low spirit, low, not haughty, leif toiva, good heart, yetzitov, good inclinations, chelik tov, he had a good portion, I guess he was independent means. They would groom him. They put him first in the lower court on Arbais. Then the higher court, and then the largest court. So that would be like a semicircle. And the Nasi sat in the middle. They should write also in order that everybody should see him, but should call and hear him speak. Gamliel should be Yavna. Gamliel sat in Yavna was slightly different. Gamliel was sat in the middle. Abba and Reb Tzadok, who was the senior member of the Sanhedrin, who was older than Gamliel, sat on his right. And Reb Tzadok's brother, who we don't know who was, but he sat on Reb Tzadok's right. So then there was giving cover to Gamliel. Reb Tzadok sat to his right, and Reb Tzadok's brother sat on his right. So each person had somebody to his right, right? And so it was Canim, and the other elders would sit mismo, they would sit around on Gamliel's left hand. And they covered Zok in this order to give cover to Rabbi Tzadok, who was the senior dying. Okay? So it was not perfect semicircle, but it was kind of lopsided semicircle. Okay, in Yavne. So how many judges were in Am Yisrael based on the midboard? Sheva Ribo, 70,000, Shmonah and 8,000, Sheshmos and 600. Sorry, Alofim, the noble, the ones who charge of thousands, judge 1,000, Sheshmos or 600, because 600,000 people. Sorry, Meo Shesh Alofim, 6,000, corresponding to the 600,000. Sorry, Chamishim, mass judges of 50, Shnemos or 12,000. Sorry, Asoros, how many soros are there? Shimel, 60,000. So it comes out there was Sheva Ribo, 70,000, Vishmoslav, and 8,000, Sheshmel, and 600. Okay. My time it should be the Rabbanan. Everywhere changes around. The rabbis who said, in a city, in order to have a session, you need 120 people. So the way it works is that there's a basin of 23, and then there's parts left out here. In the Bible it says, is there a meeting in the base medrash now? Can you go and tell me if they're starting to daven?
Huh?
Can you go and tell me if...
I don't think so. We already said that there's not going to be.
It's not going to be, even with us?
Huh?
There's not going to be even with us?
Maybe we can make a meeting, but...
Yeah, go see if they need us. Yeah, go see if there's an unofficial meeting. Okay, and come back and let us know. Thank you. It says in the Bible also, beside, how many people you have? In here on the base medrash? Base medrash right now? Are there 7 people there now? Can you call me when there's 7 people? Because I don't want to, we'll make the 10. Okay, there are 3 of us. Okay? Okay. So, my time there again, what's the logical Rabbanon? You need to, besides that, the Bible says there are 3 rows of 23 in front of them. Students who would be designated to be elevated. So that's 23 times 4, which is 90, which is 80, 92, right? 92. And then besides that, there'd be the Nidonim, the two litigants, that's 94. Vedim, 2 witnesses, 96. V'zomim, people to be mazim them, that's 98. V'zomim, 2 people to be mezomim, the zomim, that's the 100. V'chazan, the guy in charge of beating, that's 101. V'sofreim, the 2 scribes, each side's 103. V'sharmesh and a sharmesh, so that's 104. Besides that, the Bible says there were 10 baklonim.
We're going over this.
Oh, they're starting already?
There's more than 7 people.
Okay, fine. We'll be there in a second. And then Batlonim will just sit and learn all day. And besides that, the Bavli brings out a bunch of other people that have to be a soifer, and a bloodletter, and a doctor, a bunch of other people who have to live in the city, butcher, a bunch of other things. So they had some targets ready. My time with the Rabbi Nechemia, so here the Mechabayim changes gears and says fascinating things, not in the Bavli. Because the Bavli just says our Mishnah. But Rushi Yeshem, it says that he changed gears to Asora Sanhedrin or Asora Shvatim. You need 230 people in a city corresponding to the 10 Sanhedros, which there were in Eretz Yisrael. What does it mean 10? Because 2 tribes were on the other side of the Jordan River, in the East Bank. On the West Bank, you had 10 tribes. 10 tribes times 23 is 230. So altogether, you had 230 people in the city in order to make up the number corresponding to Sanhedrin.
Actually, 2.5 tribes.
2.5, yeah, but the half which was on the other side, they also needed Sanhedrin on the West Bank. Their Sanhedrin was on the West Bank of the Jordan River. All right, boys, I will have to stop here because we need to join the minyan. We almost did 2 o'clock. Maybe tomorrow night we'll do that.
Hang on the Mercury.